As candidate host cities, we're aware that part of your focus now is identifying the right stakeholders to engage with, right? That's part of some of the things you've been asked to do. So we wanted to give you a message from a group of stakeholders we're hoping you won't forget about. Tace?
To keep migrant families. They say children should be seen and not heard. They say they'll understand when you're older. You're just a kid. But a kid swam for 3 hours on the open sea to save 18 lives and became an activist for refugees. A kid broke through barriers to keep migrant families together and delivered a message of hope.
Let us fight with love, faith, and courage so that our families will not be destroyed.
A kid was forced to kill in a brutal civil war and became a human rights activist, freeing other children from violence. A kid fought for girls' right to education, was shot in the head in retaliation, and won the Nobel Prize.
This award is not just for me. It is for those forgotten children who want education, who want peace, who want change.
And a kid spoke truth to power, inspiring a historic movement against climate change.
We kids shouldn't have to do this. I wish that the adults would take their responsibility and do this instead. But since no one's doing anything, we have to.
Kids are speaking up. Kids are demanding their rights. Kids are acting now for a better tomorrow. What will you do?
I got chills watching that. That's terrific. So child voice. We want to talk this session about how to incorporate children's views, how to take them into account when we're making decisions that ultimately affect them. So in doing so, there are three key questions that come to mind. So the first one is the what. So what is meaningful child and youth engagement? What is it? What's it look like? Two, what for? So why is this important? Why is it important to invest in hearing and incorporating the voices of young people? And third, the what now? So how do you engage young people, right? How do you do that in a way that's responsible, but also productive? So I'm going to address these questions for the next speakers. But before that, I want you to think about something during the next session. As you hear from these speakers, try to imagine how what they say, how you would apply what you hear through the lens of your city and your bid. So what would it look like to your city to do some of these things? What would that look like to incorporate child voice and children's views? What are the possibilities? How could you take that idea and make it something unique that you could apply to your city and your locality? So in doing so, let me introduce the invitees for this session. Mara Mincer, Director, Growing Up Boulder and UNICEF USA Child Friendly Cities Advisor. Welcome, Mara. And Abdullah Akil, UNICEF USA Child Friendly Cities National Youth Advisor and student at Long Island University. Welcome. Can I ask you both to tell us a little bit more about your expertise with this very important issue of child voice?
Hi, and thank you so much, Mary. It's such a pleasure to be here with all of you today. Again, my name is Mara Mincer, and I'm the director of a program called Growing Up Boulder, or GUB. Unfortunately, it has not the best acronym. But what we do is we get young people's voices in city planning. We are Boulder's Child and Youth Friendly City Initiative, and we are a partnership based out of the University of Colorado, but we're a partnership between our local city, so the city of Boulder, Colorado, our public school district, and our mission is to empower Boulder's young people with opportunities for inclusion, influence, and deliberation on local issues that affect their lives. Now, we have been in operation since 2009, so 11 years now, and engaged more than 6,000 children and youth. And I want to point out that we said children and youth, and the reason we separate this out, and I know this is different in different languages, but the idea remains the same. Our youth actually told us, we don't want to be lumped in with children. We want to be spelled out differently. And so that is why we talk about those two different groups. Now, because we're based out of the university, we've worked with 1,500 university students. And while we seek to raise the voices of all of our young people, more than 50% of our young people are from historically marginalized groups, because we're aware that they even have less opportunities to have their voices heard. So we make a special commitment to them.
Hey everyone, my name is Abdullah. I'm a student at Long Island University here in Brooklyn in New York City. And just a lot has been going on with me in relations to UNICEF and in relations to children and youth rights. And it all started, I would think, in October of 2019, when I had the great opportunity to go with UNICEF to the CFCI conference, the Child Friendly Cities Initiative conference in Cologne, Germany. And there I met with youth and children from all across the world, and we met with mayors from those cities, where we were able to sit on panels, discuss with them what a child-friendly city would look like in their own city. Bringing that back into the United States, I started to reflect on how I can make my own city, Brooklyn, a child-friendly city. And taking that all into account, remembering that children's rights and children's voices matter in every step of the way.
Terrific. Well, thank you both. So here again is my first question. What is meaningful child and youth engagement? But I guess Abdullah wanted to ask this question to the participants first, right? Abdullah?
Yeah, so the poll, we're going to start it off with, what do you think child and youth engagement is? And it should be coming up on everyone's screen now. So there are three different options. The first one is giving kids total control. The second one is working alongside children and youth. And the third one is consulting with children and youth, but adults take charge. So we're going to give everyone some time just to pick one.
Okay, we'll end this. There we go.
And everyone can see that now the poll results are being shared. It's working alongside children and youth, but it's really so much more than that. And in the next couple of slides, you're really going to be seeing how children working alongside children and youth working alongside adults is so much more than just how it sounds. It's more of a hand-in-hand cooperation between each other. So, yes, Mara?
Sure. So this is a nice illustration building on what Abdullah was saying of the different ways that children and youth can work with adults. Now, all the way to the left, you see when they have no participation or the participation is tokenistic or unethical, that's what we want to avoid. But the next three chunks that you see there are all really wonderful ways of partnership between children and adults. So sometimes it'll be completely adolescent-led from beginning to end. For example, some teens in a neighboring town of ours wanted to build a teen center. That really was their idea and built from there. But then there are other more subtle ways of participating where you're either consulting with the young people, and another way is to collaborate with the young people. Another thing to really think about is child safeguarding, and I know you'll be talking about this even more tomorrow. And the definition is that it's proactive measures to limit direct and indirect collateral risks of harm to children from our work, personnel, or associates. But this is everyone's responsibility. So we all really need to be taking this seriously and thinking about what we're doing to safeguard our young people's needs.
Thanks, Mara. So now I'd like to hear from Abdullah. As a young man, what does it mean to you for children's views to be taken into account in a meaningful and authentic way?
So this is actually a great question because a lot of the time there might be a huge misconception that children and youth engagement is just simply bringing children on, getting what they want, like just hearing out their ideas and then just putting them to the side. But really, real and meaningful youth and children and bringing them actually onto the table is keeping them there from A to Z, making sure that we not only hear their ideas, but we also have them part of the decision process, that they're not only there to share their ideas in the beginning couple of steps, but when it comes near the end where the decision goes down, where even awards later on are handed out because of this great idea, children are no longer there. So it's important for me and important for many children that I've spoke to that children and youth's voices are not only used in the beginning, but are actually being part of the whole decision process, and they're actually hand in hand with the adults.
Okay, terrific. And I think we have more information. Tice, if you could put that in the chat box from UNICEF USA on CFCI options for action, that'd be terrific. So we're going on to the next one. Excellent points, Abdullah. But before we go to the second question, which is why invest in young people's voices, I think we want to hear from the audience again, right? You got another poll?
Yes, and right here it says, what reasons do you think are most important to justifying engaging children and youth? The first one is it's a right. The second one is it leads to better decisions. The third one, it develops children and youth to be better leaders. The fourth one is we have to do it. And the fifth, it creates healthier and more sustainable cities for all.
That's great. It's a little more split this time.
Yeah.
See, what
Okay,
are the
if you had-
results here?
Yeah.
Here we go. All right. It creates healthier and more sustainable cities for all seems to be the winner. And of course, the reality is that all of those answers are really good ones. There are multiple reasons why it's really important to be engaging our young people. And I'll be talking about that now. So children and youth voice matters because kids aren't just future citizens, they're current citizens. And we discussed this earlier. It's a right that young people have a voices in decisions which affect their own lives. It makes sense also to include the end user in our design process. There have been research studies that show when people co-create a space, when they give input to it, they're more likely to take care of it and value it. And so this works for all of us. A child-friendly city is a city that is friendly to all. So if you are building, for instance, a sidewalk that has a ramp on it and is smooth, that's going to help a parent who's pushing a stroller, but it will also help someone who might be using a walker or in a wheelchair. Young people offer creative and flexible ways of thinking. They bring a really unique perspective. And there's also research on this, which shows that as we get older, because we take in so much information, we have to come up with frameworks to help us really understand that information. But children haven't yet developed such rigid frameworks. And so they really bring a unique, creative point of view. We've also found there are benefits of dialogue for all involved. We have seen that often seniors and children, when they partner together, have some of the same interests and can really move things forward in a really positive way. Young people's enthusiasm is completely contagious. Our city council members in Boulder have told us their favorite city council meetings are when young people are involved. And it's incredible how something can be really stuck and then move forward because of that enthusiasm that's in the room. And as we were saying before, Article 12 talks about children's participation being a fundamental right. So we've found that children's input actually leads to better outcomes for all of the following groups. And let me just give you a few examples of why that is. First of all, in the communities, as we said before, it actually can reduce vandalism when young people are involved in creating those spaces and giving feedback. The next is for children and youth themselves. It creates a sense of civic engagement. And we've seen in our work that when you work with kids at a young age, they continue that desire to be civically engaged beyond that individual engagement. It can also make the school curriculum come alive if you're integrating the work into school. For parents, they have great pride in their communities when they know that young people are being listened to, but it also can create less stressful and more supportive parenting situations. So for example, if it's safe for a child to walk to school by him or herself, that frees up some of the parents' time to be able to do other things. And it also allows the child to gain a sense of pride and independence. For government, it can lead to a much more productive conversation. This photo here shows preschool children submitting their ideas to our city council for an area called the civic area. And we heard from our senior urban planner that he was most influenced by anyone was by these kids and what they were looking for. And those ideas were then reflected in the final design. And finally, program and policy decisions. When you hear from children who are traditionally underrepresented voices, it balances out a lot of the more well-organized voices, such as for us, we had a soccer league and a ultimate Frisbee league that were really wanting an entire space to be used just for sports fields. But when we brought kids' voices into the process, it balanced it out and then allowed for both those spaces to be incorporated into the final design.
And so I have a simple question, and there are 3 different pictures that you guys could all see, and they're all similar in a specific way. If everyone can simply put in the chat, what is similar about all 3 of these pictures? I'll give you guys a quick couple of seconds because this should be pretty simple. What is something similar that you see in all 3 pictures? Kids playing on the ground, kids playing in a playground, outdoor playing, and that's exactly it. Playgrounds all across the world are being used mostly by children. And so it would make the most sense that children are in the decision-making process in these parks. If we were to build a park and build slides and all of these, and they're being used mostly by children, it just makes the most sense that children are like, hey, this is how we want the slide to look like. This is how we want this to look like. And children's ideas sometimes could sound like they might not sound practical, but you could always take from it what you can and make it seem more practical for them. But their ideas are always useful and always good to be used in the table.
That's terrific. If they'd asked me when I was that age, everything would have been a treehouse. Okay, so those are really great insights. But I think maybe our audience might be asking themselves, okay, I hear you, I get it. But in practical terms, like, how do I do this? Right? Let's get practical. I mean, part of this is pragmatism. How do I actually do this? So Mara, give us some advice.
Okay, well, we have a poll here for you. So say a child proposes that all children should go to the FIFA World Cup games for free. How should you respond? Let's see what you say here. And while we're waiting, Mary, actually, our kids all requested tree houses from the youngest age to the oldest age. And our city council was so impressed by the work that over 250 kids had done that they put into policy language that a treehouse must be included in the final design of the space. And we have a treehouse now. So there you go. You got your dream.
Yes. Excellent.
Okay.
Okay. We have the results of the poll.
Yep. So overwhelmingly, people said work with the child to translate the request into something feasible. And that's exactly right. And we do this time and time again in our work. I'm going to show you a little bit more about that work. But just so you know, they will come up with crazy ideas, and there's a lot of power under what they're saying. It's just about us learning how to understand that. So I know a lot of you're all coming from cities. So I wanted to explain that the way we choose the projects that we work on is we look at the Venn diagram where we come together of what have we heard that matters to young people? What are the latest issues that our city is working on? And then we work with our educational partners to make sure that whatever we're doing integrates into their plans that they're already trying to do for educational standards or their after-school programs. Now, in terms of the role of the city in our work, they actually are the primary funder of my position. And so that's the equivalent of one full-time equivalent. And as I mentioned, they suggest projects for collaboration. They also serve as thought partners or subject matter experts. So they come in throughout the project to share the framework of the project and to really weigh in on some of the kids' ideas and say, hey, you're on the right track, or maybe you should think about this, try tweaking it a little. And then finally, at the end, they serve as the audience for the young people when they share their ideas out. So what's exciting about this work is I've noticed 3 levels of impact. The first is the impact on the individual child. We do a pre and a post survey test with the kids, and it says, I have a voice in decisions which affect me. And kids who have gone through our program show a huge increase in this idea. They know they have made a difference, and it lasts, it sticks with them. The next level of impact is a specific place that can change. So this image here is, we worked with teenagers on what would a teen-friendly park look like. And this is the result of one of their recommendations. That swing that boy is on is actually able to take the weight of a teenager, and there are numbers of other equipment that have been put in place there. And the last level of impact is actually at the policy level. So this is when we had young people working on what would a bike and walk master plan, a transportation master plan look like. And so this was an image that had been put together from an adult summit, but I made sure that the kids' ideas that we had been working on were integrated in here. Every one of these orange lines that point out here, those are all what young people recommended and were integrated into that final policy plan. And the head of our transportation department literally would carry this printout in her briefcase and show it at meetings and say, are we doing this? The kids are holding us responsible. So it was a really nice way to hold everyone accountable. So you may be wondering, well, how do you translate these kids' recommendations into adult language? We create reports, and we figured this out over many years of doing our model, where we start by describing what the problem is and describing the process of how did we get the kids' ideas. Then we compile and analyze the data, and we're looking for themes. What are the underlying themes? So if kids want skydiving, all right, we can't do skydiving, but is there something underlying that? They want an adrenaline rush. They want a thrill. And so those are the themes we're looking for. And then finally, we report out the conclusions after analyzing that data, and we share it back with the city and with the children. And what we found is that the city holds on to all of this and uses it for many years in the future. Okay, so if we are looking at our model, this is a model that we've developed over these past 11 years. And we start by establishing kids as the experts on their own experience. But we also need to introduce what the project is and why their voice matters and what the framework is for all of this work. But then knowing that maybe a 10-year-old has not seen all the best practices out there in the world, we send that 10-year-old out there to do research. So that research might be on the internet. It might be in the form of a field trip to a space. It might be in the form of bringing in those city partners or architects or community partners to really engage with the kids and help them refine their thinking. And then finally, the kids synthesize their ideas and share them out. And that can be in all sorts of different formats. And for that final synthesis, we invite in the partners. We often have city council members or planning board members, as well as other local politicians and city staff members to truly have a dialogue with our young people. So we realized that we've been able to distill out 5 pillars of our work, 5 basic principles. And these are the principles. The first is to go to where the young people are. We don't ask the kids to come to us. We've tried that. Often does not work, especially if you're talking about underrepresented kids who may not be used to standing up in front of a large crowd and being heard. Instead, we bring those adults into their classroom. So when we had teen parents who were supposed to present some of their issues and top concerns to city council, I put into place all the different supports I could think of: childcare, free pizza. I was willing to pick them up at their house. None of them showed up at City Council. So instead, we flipped that idea and asked City Council to come to them. And when the city councilors came to their classroom, all of a sudden these young ladies opened up, shared fabulous ideas, and it had shifted the power dynamic. Number 2 on this list is that we use fun, creative, varied engagement methods. We don't make them sit down in a traditional workshop and do the adult style workshop. We know that doesn't work so well. Instead, we use lots of art and drama and poetry and getting out of the classroom. Number 3 is we make our engagements asset-based. So when we look at our young people, what we first see is, what are the assets in their lives? It's their lived experience, it's their culture, it's their skills and experience. And so, for instance, we have a large Mexican American population here. So what we did was we built a whole curriculum around looking at Mexican American art and culture and music, and tried to figure out how we could integrate that into the spaces we were designing. 4th is we're transparent about the process and outcomes. Just like adults expect to hear what's happened to their ideas and know how they're being utilized along the way, we think that's incredibly important. And so we make sure to have touch points throughout where we're really giving them an opportunity to hear what's happening to their ideas. And when I do a longer version of this talk, what we do is I actually show you some of the ways that we share that information back to the children themselves and to the community at large. We also celebrate small wins. You know, a child's lifespan, they've only been on the earth for a short time. And so sometimes a public planning project can take 6 years, which feels like an eternity to them. So we try to make sure they know that their ideas matter if there's a ribbon cutting, even at the beginning of a building project, or that we've listened to them in some other way. And finally, we always reflect, evaluate, and adapt. None of our projects is complete if we haven't really thought about what went well and what should be done differently the next time. And then we use an iterative model where we include that information in our future projects. And so they're always adapting, and it always keeps them interesting. So I'm going to give you a case study here. This past spring, we were working with about 270 5th and 4th grade children, so about 10 years old. And there's going to be a new library in their neighborhood, and it's a multi-million-dollar project. And so we really wanted to get their input about 5 different spaces where there was still an opportunity for them to influence the outcome. So we started by introducing the framework of the project, again, what it was, why their voices mattered, how it would affect them. And then we captured their ideas by having them draw some of their thoughts out, by having them go out and take photographs of the space and analyze the space. And if you note in the photos here, this is pre-COVID. So this happens, this was in about February, but you're going to see in the next slides it transitions to COVID times. Oops, before I get to COVID times, what I want to tell you is, that's okay, you can go to the methods one. I forgot that was next. So for the methods, this is just a list of the many, many methods we use for getting young people's voices. We actually wrote a book about this because so many people had been coming to us and asking, how do you do these? So our book, Placemaking with Children and Youth, actually gives instructions for how to do these methods and apply them. And the ones that I've starred here are the ones that you will see in the work that I'm describing next. Okay, so what we did was we increased the kids' competence. And that image on the left is an image of a mural that one of the kids found during her research and that she wanted to bring forward into our community. And again, it was reflecting back the vibrant Mexican culture that we have right next to where that library is going to be built. But we also interviewed our subject matter experts. This is a planning board member over Zoom on the right. Now we had changed to COVID times. And so this was the kids asking him a question about how he does his work and, you know, what did he think of certain questions and ideas they had. Then in the end, the kids synthesized their ideas to offer recommendations. So that top is a image of a 3D model that a child did. Those are called twinkle lights, according to her. And she wanted to have lights and gardens all throughout the outdoor space at the library, which makes sense for what it's supposed to be. And the young lady on the bottom was showing us over Zoom. She used SketchUp, the software program, and this was her version of the interior of a makerspace that's supposed to happen at the library. And so we had all the decision makers on Zoom having a discussion with the kids, and it was incredibly successful. The kids, we heard from the teacher that this was the project that brought their class together during COVID times. This kept them all connected and gave meaning to the work and brought everything alive.
So I guess, I hope we have a clear idea on very practical, concrete steps that you can take. So Abdullah, how would you summarize the main takeaways and advice from this session?
So we discussed a lot throughout this session, and we discussed children and youth engagement. We discussed so many different things that you could be taking away with you today and bringing it either back to your community, back to your countries, or just generally back to your families. And some of these things really start off with how we interact with children, how adults interact with children and youth, and making sure that it starts from safeguarding to bringing them onto the decision process, making sure that children feel safe in every single kind of environment. Back when I was at the Child Friendly Cities Initiative in Cologne, the conference, in the beginning of this whole conference, they brought all the children together and they set out some guidelines for us, and the same guidelines they set out to the adults. They told us, this is what we told the adults, that this is how you guys would feel safe, and this is exactly how they will follow them, and this is what you guys could do if you guys don't feel safe. And after going through that experience, I wish that every single place I would go to would treat us that same way. Because a lot of the time, children and youth are put into different settings where they might feel unsafe, uncomfortable, or just want to leave that space as soon as they can. But what UNICEF was able to do in that space was they made sure that children felt safe. And by making children and youth feel safe in these settings, it prompts and pushes them to engage in more meaningful conversations and motivates them to really express the ideas that they have in them. Another thing that happened a couple of years ago in my local center here in Brooklyn was they were building this multi-million-dollar community center, actually. And they brought all the youth of the community together because it was really going to be a youth space. It was going to be a youth center for the community that everyone could be using. And so youth came in with their ideas like, we want a swimming pool, we want a rooftop where we could be playing basketball. They had so many great ideas. And all this was happening in a really residential neighborhood. So a lot of roadblocks were in our way as a community to put this in the middle of a residential neighborhood where basketball, lights would be going on, and so many homes are surrounding it. So what we did was we invited the community, not only children and youth, but adults as well, to be in the same setting where they could all be sharing their ideas, and their ideas are all put at an equal scale. No one's ideas was better than someone else's. Everyone was put at the same level, so everyone felt comfortable and safe to share their ideas. And that brings me to the second point, is that everyone should, that children and youth should be able to share their ideas from A to Z. That not only are they there to share their ideas in the beginning, as I mentioned before, but when the decision-making happens, that they have the same voting right as other people on that table. Because when voting comes to happen and decisions are come to happen, children and youth feel extremely bad. I can't explain how bad it feels when sometimes children and youth are told, hey, sit on the side now, the adults are about to make a decision. Even though children feel like, hey, these are some of my ideas. I was the one that contributed to saying, let's have a rooftop over there. Why can't I vote on this? And so it doesn't make sense, and it even is unfair to just use children and youth for their voice, for their great ideas, and then disregard them for the decision-making process. And then after the decision-making process is done and all the work is put in, there are always awards that go around. And in this time, it is so important, as Maura said, to have these children at these ribbon ceremonies where we're cutting the ribbon to this new center that we have. it is so important to have children there and recognize them, that they were a vital part of the decision-making process, that their ideas are valued and their voice is always valued from A to Z.
And I can just explain briefly, we have a number of resources here that are available to all of you. You can either get in touch with myself or with Abdullah. You can follow him on Instagram. Also on our website, you can find out more information and see case studies or get support from our organization. Sometimes my TED Talk has been very useful to help people understand what this actually means. Our book is a useful tool. And then on the Child Friendly Cities website, there's a lot of great information too. And we want to thank you for listening and engaging with all of this today.
No, don't go anywhere.
Okay, we're right here.
Yeah, no, just stay right here. So first of all, you said the website. Do we have that website link we can paste in? I'm asking sort of my stuff. There it is, LinkedIn. Oh no, there's Abdullah sharing his LinkedIn information.
I'll stick the website.
So questions. I mean, I think we have some time to take a few questions, and would love to hear either anonymously through Tace or through chat what questions people have. There we go. growingupboulder.org. Thank you, Tice. So Tice, are we getting any questions, or does anyone have one? I don't see any in the chat box.
Not yet, no.
But I saw a lot of really positive reactions and responses to Mara, what you and Abdullah have presented today. It's really inspiring. I remember very clearly, it's not entirely related, but a little bit. When I was on the U.S. women's national team, I'll never forget when we brought children finally into the locker room for the first time, when my teammates started to have kids, and just the impact that had of having kids in the locker room with you, as young as, infants to toddlers, and it just changed the whole dynamic immediately, definitely for the better. So, that's a small example. It's not exactly on point, but it's just, it's transformative. It really is.
Mary, we have a question.
Okay.
From Anthony. It's a public one.
Okay.
Are there any examples? Yes, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Are there any examples of building cross-cultural competence for children in the context of mega sporting events?
So Mara, any examples, or Abdullah?
We haven't in particular worked on mega sporting events because the city of Boulder is just not that big, and we're not having them per se. However, we do a lot of cross-cultural competence throughout all of the work that we do. And actually, I think it's foundational that you set up with the young people safe spaces for them to be able to share ideas, but also to learn about other cultures and to experience other cultures. So we are weaving that into all of the work we do. And actually, one of our favorite projects was called Building Bridges. And we heard from second grade English language learner students of how do we create a productive dialogue in our community. And honestly, some of the information they've shared is stuff that we've gone back to use with adults.
That's terrific. Another question is, how do you integrate children with special sensory and or neurodiversity needs into this work so their view and needs are included?
Yeah, we do that a lot, actually. And this same principle I'm going to share applies really to any of the work that you're doing. We look for partner organizations that are experts in working with kids who are neurodiverse or who have other special needs. And so what we do is we co-create the work that we do to engage them. So we learn from the people who know those kids best, well, what works? And sometimes it's a variety of options. Often kids have a really wide-ranging number of needs, but we've included kids who are nonverbal. We've included kids with physical disabilities, with sensory processing disorder, just the whole gamut. There are lots of ways to include them. And you can also include their parents' voices as well, because sometimes the parents know a lot about what works or doesn't work for their child. And again, there are case studies on our website. If we did one on universal access design, and we also did one on the Boulder Reservoir, where we worked with kids with a variety of special needs.
It's interesting, when we were working on the bid, we included in the bid book a reference to sensory rooms in stadiums for kids who may find that helpful. But I would have loved to have had kids who would use that room as, involved in the process. We just mentioned that it was something that we look at. But I think for many of, the cities on the call who are familiar with their stadiums, they probably have one already in place. But just the thought of engaging kids in what that would look and feel like, and what their game experience might be at the World Cup through that lens, if they chose to use that room. Okay, other questions? Lucy Amos, you had a comment from the Bahamas Commonwealth Youth Games, and then Anthony has another question. Lucy, you there?
Yeah, I am. So yeah, at the Commonwealth Youth Games in the Bahamas in 2017, they had a thing called Athlete Impact Labs, where they every day for about 2 sessions each day, they brought together upwards of 70 athletes from all different cultures. So they were from all of the different participating teams, but also children from the host community. And they were working together really to sort of share experiences, but insights on all sorts of issues, ranging from sustainability to community development to inclusion and diversity. But it was a really useful example of actually children from really different parts of the world. Had people from the UK and Europe, people from parts of Africa, Caribbean children, all sorts. It was really good.
Terrific. And I know in the bid, we talked a lot about the fact that Mexico, Canada, and the United States were neighbors, and we eat each other's food. There's a lot of cross-cultural mix because simply we've been neighbors, and we have that crossover, and that sort of mixed with the fact that, all three of our countries have such wonderful and diverse populations from all over the world that will be celebrated at something like the World Cup. So there's so many opportunities for cross-cultural learning at something like a World Cup in particular. 48 countries will be represented. I mean, that's just incredible.
I don't know if Abdullah wants to say something about when we were in Cologne, Germany. He was just with the most amazing group of kids from around the world. So what was that like, Abdullah?
Yeah, so really, it wasn't only that we were just together and just like socializing out of like coincidence, but we were actually put into different working groups where we were creating projects with each other, where every single kind of different speaker that would come and speak just to the youth and children, they'd put us and we do projects with each other on how we think youth and children engagement looks like. And some of these projects were really important, yes, but were important for me personally because I was able to interact with these other children and youth, really hear their ideas and how their cities were able to bring were able to bring their children and youth voices into account. And really, like, I didn't expect that I would be able to meet with this many different people from different backgrounds with so many different ideas that I would have never thought of before. Like here in New York City, like I have a bunch of ideas, yes, but people from all across the world had so many ideas that I really wouldn't have thought of before unless I sat in that same setting that I was in Cologne, Germany. And I think we can take away something from that bringing youth together from different parts of the world, even from the United States, Mexico, and Canada, that alone has so much power in it. That children alone, aside from what the adults are able to benefit, but children are able to benefit so much from each other, hearing from each other their ideas, and they're able to build ideas from each other on their own, actually. Because a lot of us had our own ideas from the United States, from Germany, from Spain, from France, from all across the world, really. Every child or youth had their own idea. But when we were together in the same setting, we were able to share these ideas with each other and build them and build onto them. And then we were able to present to the adults, like, hey, here is the idea that we all came up with collectively. And I think that has so much power in it, that you have 50 or 60 or 70 youth from all across the world telling you that, hey, we all agree with this one idea and it sounds great to us. It'd be great if you're able to implement this. That has so much power.
Terrific. All right. Well, thank you. That was an incredible session. I got a lot out of it.